So let's talk a little bit of Warhammer 40K narrative. Now Games Workshop have finally lifted the lid on Arks of Omen, what are Abaddon and Vashtor up to? Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today I thought we'd just take things up a little bit from the regular tactics things and take a video to discuss Games Workshop's unfolding narrative of the Arks of Omen, basically for no other reason than I was kind of interested. There's a new Chaos demigod on the prowl, Abaddon and a whole bunch of enormous ships are heading their way towards mysterious objectives, so I thought we'd just do a quick summary of the 40k lore of Arks of Omen Abaddon. So this new Abaddon book has gone up for pre-order today. Games Workshop has been hyping up the Arks of Omen series for rather quite a while now, giving us little teasers as to what's to come, and they even had that 10-part long series of cryptic hints with the Emperor's Tarot. We know there's going to be 4 books in the series. They're titled Abaddon, Angron, Vashtor, and a Xenos one. That one might be something to do with either Farsight or the Tyranids. Games Workshop has been a bit more quiet on that than most. In the Abaddon book, it's mainly split into 2 different sections, a whole chunk of lore and the new Boarding Actions 40k game mode. I will be covering that in the next video, hopefully. Though I'd broadly say that the lore in this one is more sort of setting the scene for Arks of Omen, establishing the major players, and the great Space Hulk death machines that are the Arks. The story sets off with an introduction to Abaddon. He's been kind of busy lately, having destroyed Cadia and having opened the Great Rift across the galaxy, and since then he's been engaged in war on the Vigilist front, the one that basically is trying to secure the Nachmund Gauntlets, one of the few safe passages between the main Imperium and the Imperium Nihilus. Broadly speaking, he was repelled from that by the Wardens of the Gauntlet Space Marines, and following that series of conflicts he's been approached by the Chaos demigod Vashtor with the offer of a mutual alliance. Vashtor and his new model were unveiled by Games Workshop kind of recently. The model isn't out yet, but they did give us a whole load of details as to what he represents in the lore, the demon demigod of the Forge. It looks like he's basically the god figure for things like the Dark Mechanicum, Obliterators, Warpsmiths, and demon engines and things. I feel like a fair few of those didn't necessarily feel like they were massively skewed to any one of the 4 major great powers, so it's kind of nice that they get a leader figure. Where Khorne is fueled off the anger of the mortals, and say Slaanesh off the depravity and excess, Vashtor gets his power off endless technological innovation and reckless science, and there's plenty of that about in the 41st millennium. He inhabits a great forge within the warp, and there he manufactures things like soul grinders and things called calamity engines and infernal bombards, both of which, at least to my knowledge, aren't particularly well-known things within Warhammer 40k. Not sure if they've been mentioned in lore elsewhere as maybe demon units or something, but I feel like to call out things that we don't really know by name could certainly be an indication of future things coming from Games Workshop at some point. In general, he tries to make himself useful to all the ruinous powers, supplying them with weapons and demon engines to further their great game, though he has ambitions of his own and ideally wants to be the 5th Chaos God and even power to contest the rest. Currently he's not really at that kind of level, apparently a sort of similar rank to Be'lakor, though a bit of a different kind of beast, as Be'lakor's power derives from the 4 great gods, where Vashtor is very much his own thing with his own power. When he manifests in real space, his followers sacrifice offerings, both machine and flesh, and he manifests out of the whole mess of them, forming the rather nightmarish forge demon that is his model. I'd guess that miniature is actually going to be dropping with the Vashtor book in the series. It would make sense, and I feel like the coming of this guy might well foreshadow a Dark Mechanicus release at some point in the future. I could certainly imagine Games Workshop releasing some biomechanical horrors of a lesser nature with him at their head. In any case, the thing that Vashtor is offering is that they're both wanting to try and seek out an ancient technological key, something that Games Workshop teased in one of their tarot cards. Basically, this thing just seems to be a good excuse for Chaos to have a good fight with just about every single race in the galaxy. Apparently, the key is an ancient technological relic that will allow you to build something that's a galactic threat weapon, but the parts of it are literally all over the place, and there are a lot of them. The book mentions that while a few of them are relatively easy for them to obtain, a whole load of them are very deep in Imperial or Xenos space, and nothing short of all-out war is going to recover them and give them the chance to retrieve those relics. As for the actual nature of the key, Games Workshop really hasn't told us much yet. They had a page where there's a prophecy about it. I'd say broadly speaking the overtones were that get the big key then bad things happen, but there's certainly a fair few lines that have some big overtones of certain 40k races. There's a very Khorne themed few lines that sound like they could be to do with Angron, given that we know that he's appearing later in the series, and there's certainly a few lines that could foreshadow the returning of the Lion, talking about an ancient knight nearly on his field of victory and weeping amber tears. That's swiftly followed up by a bit with circles within circles, which is very Dark Angels as well. Overall though, basically if you get the bits of the key, you put them together and then that gives you the design to build a great artifact weapon, something that's apparently going to be powerful enough for Abaddon to basically overcome the Imperium with. The reason that Vashtor approached Abaddon about this is that Vashtor knows where the pieces are, probably just to get to know that sort of thing, being the god of forbidden technology I guess, but Abaddon actually has the might and means to get them, therefore they can both benefit. Abaddon wants to use the key to overcome the Imperium, and Vashtor just wants it activated full stop. Supposedly he thinks that that amount of forbidden technology being unleashed will allow him to ascend to the realm of the fifth Chaos God, so it's nice that they both get something out of it I guess. So with that goal in mind, that brings us to the actual Arks of Omen, the title of the whole series. As Games Workshop have told us already, these are basically refitted Space Hulks, though we get a fair few more details in this book as to exactly what's going on with them. The book goes into a fair amount of detail as to the enormous nightmarish fusions of technology that Space Hulks are, lots of ships all mashed together, all sorts of ancient technological horrific weaponry, Xenos mutants, and potentially unfriendly chaos, and apparently pacifying them and turning the Arks into something useful is an entire campaign in itself. Vashtor basically is one of the only beings that apparently has a proper chance at this though. Being able to bend the technology to his will certainly helps, and then once the majority of the horrors are cleared out, he then upgrades them in a few different ways, having a flesh metal nervous system running through the entire ship, and then each one is fitted out with a few really quite major upgrades, a warp portal to allow the transfer of the artifacts back to Abaddon, a beacon in the warp so that other ships can follow them through the Great Rifts, and a great demonic ferryman mind that allows them to plot courses through warp storms themselves, potentially a big advantage in the era of the Great Rift, being able to strike at things that otherwise thought they might have been safe and isolated by the warp. When complete, each of these enormous arcs is bequeathed to a powerful lieutenant of Abaddon, someone who's trustworthy or powerful enough to be able to be entrusted with a task of retrieving one piece of the key, and the book comes to a close with the arc smashing into numerous different systems, cutting big swathes through established Imperium and Xenos strongholds, and generally causing some absolute carnage. The Chaos definitely don't have it all their own way, some of the arcs are lost or abandoned, and some of their captains misuse them and war against other ones, but broadly speaking they don't go into a huge amount of detail as to the campaigns of the arcs, more sort of ending the narrative after the initial blows. Overall, I feel like it's a fun little story for 40k. Certainly not very complete yet, but I guess it is just book 1 of 4. And I guess with Warhammer 40k, there's always a bit of emphasis on creating good narratives to have some battles with. You could certainly justify some void battles indoors in the arcs on this, either with the clearing of them or the Imperium trying to board and retake them. Kind of fun the things being teased as well. Perhaps one of the most interesting things narratively is what form this big weapon's going to take once they presumably get close to making it, and whether it really does anything particularly changing to the narrative of Warhammer 40k. We know from one of the other previews that Vashtor is going to be coming in blow to blow with the Dark Angels soon. There's that excerpt of him fighting the Rock in that page that Games Workshop teased. In any case, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. Hopefully the next video I make will be a review of the 40k boarding actions game mode from it. It looks fairly fun for a different sort of flavour of 40k. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description below if you'd like to help support and keep the videos coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next for the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.